Joining us now is Valerie Repka. She is Executive Director of Canadian Medical Assistance Teams, also a registered nurse, and she's getting ready to take a team to the Philippines to help in this relief efforts. Valerie joins us live from Mississauga, Ontario. So what is your team packing up to send to the Philippines?
Well, our first team is going to be deploying in the next 24 to 48 hours, and that's actually the assessment team. So it's a very light, nimble team that's lightly packed, simply to go in and look around and see what the issues are, what the needs are, and report back home in order to be able to better prepare our organization to respond, to tell us what sort of health needs there are and what sort of teams we need to send.
General, what are the resources that you have on standby to take over there?
We have several fully inflatable field hospitals with operating room capabilities as well as primary care capabilities. We have a database of over 1,000 medical professionals from across the country that are entirely volunteer. They self-fund. In other words, they pay their own way to get to the disaster zone. They pay their own airfare. And we encourage fundraising through our website as well to offset their costs.
We are already hearing, the disaster zone is exactly that, and it's difficult to get to some of the locations where people need help the most. How do you work with that?
We do the best that we can. CMAT is definitely a partner with the United Nations, and we are planning on participating in the health cluster meetings through the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And through that health cluster briefings, they will be able to help guide our way into the different zones, and whether we can partner with military services or find our own private transportation. It will all depend on what happens. When we get our boots on the ground, that'll completely change the story and tell us how we're going to function down there.
And what sort of challenges do you have to prepare for once you're there?
All sorts of challenges. Having all sorts of different types of medical problems that we're going to be facing, the overwhelming need from the people. They're hungry, they're thirsty, they have no shelter. Just the overwhelming need is going to be something that we have to deal with. And knowing that, we also need to deal with their medical crises. So at the present time, the issues aren't necessarily traumatic injuries such as broken bones like there would be in an earthquake, but in the coming days and weeks, infectious diseases are going to spread, things like cholera and acute watery diarrhea, skin infections and that sort of thing, especially because it's such a warm country and this was a very wet disaster. The increase in things like malaria is going to be a problem, and we're going to have to deal with infectious diseases and other primary care needs like that. And
I understand you were in Haiti shortly after that massive earthquake there, and you're going to be heading to the Philippines in a few days. How do you feel?
That's right, yeah. It's cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping that when we're there, we'll be able to identify a need and address it very, very well. It's been non-stop pretty much since Friday for me, and I'm going on very little sleep, but this is what we do, and this is what CMAT does best.
And who is CMAT made up of? You're a registered nurse, and you mentioned people who are paying their own way to get to these disaster zones.
That's right.
How did you get involved?
So I actually got involved just after the tsunami in 2004, 2005 in Indonesia, and I've actually been part of the organization since then. I've responded to the earthquake in Pakistan in 2005. I was their field medical director for 3 months there. We also had responses in Bangladesh in 2007 after the catastrophic flooding there. We responded to the Sichuan earthquake in China as well as in Japan, and to the flooding in Pakistan in 2010. So we've sent teams all over the world and have provided medical relief to countless tens of thousands of people, and delivered so many babies that we can't even count now. That's the joy of this.
Well, I'm sure people around the world appreciate your work. Valerie, thank you for speaking with us. Good luck.
Thank you for having me.
That is Valerie Repka, Executive Director of Canadian Medical Assistance Teams, joining us live from Mississauga, Ontario.